have got Chris from the project, Tom Becknell from the project, Carla Johnson, I believe, is also with the project. And then Tim Park, I think, is also with the project. And then in the room, we have
I'm
Jessica.
not with the project.
Oh, okay, Tim, and you
Sorry.
are here are you just
A citizen. I work for Airsoft. We're the maker of
Okay.
Equus. We've got a contract with the Office of Legacy Management. So when all the EM
Okay.
sites are retired, they go to the Office of Legacy Management, which is using our environmental database management software.
Okay,
And so
great.
when Moab gets retired, it'll be coming into kind of our hands. And so I just wanted to learn a little bit more about Moab.
Great, good, glad you're here, welcome. In the room, we've got Jessica Thatcher, who is our liaison between the county and the site. We've got Colin Topper, who is the city representative, Bill Jackson, road department.
Dave Powell's BLM.
Okay, Dave from the BLM, nice to meet you, Dave. Lee Shenton, former liaison between the county and the.
First one.
Yep, the first one, glad to see you, Lee.
Lasted 9 years.
Yep, you were here for a long time. We've got Ben from.
Moab Office of Tourism.
Thank you. Matt from the site and from the site. So that's who's all here. And then Steve.
Yeah,
From the county. All right. So that's everybody. We will just move right into our non-action items. We can't approve the minutes for this meeting because we didn't have the right date on the agenda. So we'll approve the January meeting, the minutes at our next meeting in July. And do we have any citizens to be heard? Lee or Tim?
Listen.
Okay, very good. Then we'll move right to the update from the site. Matt.
Excellent, thank you. It's good to see everybody. It feels like it's been a long time. Good to see Lee. Great to have you around. So we'll start out just some highlights. I do want to talk a little bit, start about legacy management a little bit. So that effort's underway. We've been working with them for a couple of years now to start this transition process. We started with a broader, we call it an IPT, Integrated Project Team. We'll look at how do we transition successfully and timely. We're moving into phase 2 of that, which is breakdown of some more technical groups. And again, same goal, get to closure, get to mission completion on time and be able to transfer, appropriate responsibilities there. So, more to come on that, but essentially we've got a large group of technical experts in DOE and with EM and LM working together. So again, start early and finish on time. That's our plan there. And again, we have started that a couple of years ago. We're kind of moving into phase 2. You guys have probably seen the progress of the sites. So we just hit 15,537,000 tons and some change. And had a really successful year. We're since the start of the fiscal year, we're 6 shipments ahead of schedule. And don't quote me on it, but I think that's probably the most we've been ahead of schedule, and it's just consistent transportation, smooth routine activities. So 16 million is right around the corner. I think that's a good opportunity too to say that we've always heard 16 and I've heard some comments about, well, we're done this year. And, of course, that's not true. We may complete the pile this year. But there's about another 1 million tons plus that's in sub-pile and off-pile, mostly probably, more in the off-pile. Sub-pile doesn't go too deep from what we can tell. But that puts us out around mid-2027, as we've discussed. So April 2027. Timeframe where we hope to have all the contaminated material removed up to Crescent Junction. So that's essentially anything that would be over the EPA 192 standard. So that's what we're cleaning up to. There could be some areas of supplemental standards where, depending on cost, safety measures, things around the highways where we would do an analysis and possibly have a supplemental standard area. So working through all that, and that's consistent with previous Umpter projects as well. Nothing new. So again, 6 train shipments out of schedule. Already talking about 16 million ton celebration. So sure Barbara's getting excited about that, but it feels like we just, feels like we just had that. You know, as far as budget, we had a full year CR. So generally that goes back to the prior year, which was 67 million. That would support what we're doing now, it would support full shipments or the scope we have now.
So if you don't mind, I'll just interject here. I was back in Washington in March. And we met with our congressional delegation and we talked about that, you know, one of the main purpose was to advocate for continued funding at this level. So I got the impression, I know they just did the CR that happened while we were there. But I felt pretty confident that they'll continue funding at this level just because the project is so close to being done. And that's our argument. It's like, you know, just don't mess with it now. But I will say, and I know that we've talked about this in the past, Congress is really gonna wanna know when that 67 million doesn't have to be 67 million anymore. So something for you guys to be thinking about so that we, when we do go back and advocate, we can say, well, you know, we don't really need that much. For the next 2 years or
Right.
until it comes on board. So I felt pretty I feel pretty confident that that level of funding is gonna stay the same.
Yeah, I do as well. You know, I don't have, I feel confident that it's a very high priority project.
Right.
We're close to completion. We've demonstrated really efficiency throughout. You know, using the funding that we're provided responsibly. So I think it's a great opportunity to wrap it up, which can't say that on the website.
Right, yeah, we also met while we were back there with 2 of the newest political appointees at the DOE. I'll be back in June, meeting with the rest of the political appointees and kind of giving an oversight, you know, overview of the project and how far we've come. It, you know, kind of keep it in front of their radar. You know, when I was meeting with them, one of the people was there for 2 days and the other person was there for 2 weeks and they had not even heard of this project.
Mhm.
So I felt like it was really good to get in front of those 2 new people, even though they probably don't really have anything to do with this site. And we want to do the same with whoever the new other people are. We'll find out. But it was interesting because when I was talking to them, giving them a history, I've been through these administrative changes, and it was like, I've been through 5 administrative changes for this, presidential changes since this project began. It was like, wow, that's a lot. So I know what happens when this, when there's a change. It's not unusual.
No,
So,
absolutely.
and Lee, you are aware of that too, because you were
Yeah.
part of it.
I know I said I started listening, but I asked one question.
Sure.
I see the newspaper, and of course, no, that's absolute fact. Baffle transpiration cover on the disposal cell.
Yeah, so that is our plan. We've been working on it for a few years now,
Mhm.
and it's currently with NRC. And then Chris will talk a little bit about that. Still section, but it's with NRC for concurrence. And a lot of advantages, one, tremendous cost savings. Better for the arid environment, better long-term performance, more aesthetic. So it really checks the boxes on all those
You didn't
things.
get blindsided on that, right? The newspaper kind of made it sound like you did.
No, I'm not.
No, it was probably me that blindsided everybody, because we met with the NRC and, there was some questions from the state about the cover, but it sounds like they worked all those issues out, so it's not an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, good question. It's something that we're excited about too. I think it's, again, as we look at efficiencies and if we can save money and have better performance, it's, it's absolutely the right thing to do. And so we're looking for NRC concurrence soon. We have frequent meetings with NRC, so we're confident that we'll get there. Thanks. So we are, let's see, I think we're, that's a great segue. Lee, we're over to disposal cell cover. So Chris Bolskamp, our project engineer and deputy cleanup director, is on camera there, and Chris is gonna provide a little bit of details about the disposal cell.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks. Real quickly, we've been talking about the disposal cell cover and our transition from the old style rock armor cover to the ET cover. And making good progress. I think there's really a light at the end of the tunnel at this point. We've submitted all the documentation that we need to submit. We've submitted the design, it's complete. We've submitted the red line strikeout of the updated documents for the remedial action plan, which is sort of the governing document for the cell up there. So they have all that. We just spoke with NRC on Monday. We had a meeting. We have a quarterly meeting with them to talk about both ET cover and all the other things that are going to be heading NRC's way, which is a lot of things. So we try to keep them up to date and in the loop. And they were pretty positive about approving the cover. We're waiting for the NEPA documentation for them to see our new NEPA documentation. We have to do a supplement analysis for NEPA. After that is approved, it's very close to approval on the EM side, and then we'll send that up to NRC for them to look at. And that is the precursor for them to go ahead and concur with the RAP, which is the final step before we can start construction. So it's all promising. I think we should see something here, I think within the fiscal year. So we should be able to get to building that thing. And it's been a long road, but I think it's going to work out very well for all the stakeholders and for DOE as well. So we're looking forward to that. And that's all I have on the ET cover. Subject to questions.
Questions for Chris?
What's the timeline on completing the cover?
Did you hear
Once
that?
it gets started?
On getting started?
Yeah, and completion date. Estimated, of course.
Yeah, well, there've been some initiatives at higher headquarters. They're trying to bring things back. So we would actually like to start earlier than we had planned. Actual start date wasn't until 2027, but we think we can pull that back and start earlier. Whenever we can start projects earlier, or tasks earlier, we can finish earlier, obviously. So I think that'll help us with schedule, if we can pull that back. So yeah, the first step is to get that approval, or it's not an approval, it's concurrence from NRC, and then we have all the material. We've been stockpiling rock for the past year and a half. And so we have plenty of rock, plenty of material to get going with. And so we are hopeful that we can start get approval this FY and then start probably next year.
You know, how long, once you start till it's done?
Till it's done?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
No.
An estimate.
Yeah.
Just wondering how long are you gonna be worked out there?
right.
Yeah, it becomes the critical path essentially, so tailings fall off.
Yeah.
We divert resources, so, mission completion is really that cap, so we're looking right now, 29 construction, so.
Gotcha.
So that's part of the closure.
Yeah, as Chris
That,
said.
that's kind of where I was going at the
Yeah.
hard way.
Yeah,
Yeah, as Chris
Yeah,
said, we
it'll-
start in 26.
It'll be complete. It'll be complete by the end. It has to stay open, obviously, for all the material that originates down at the site. So a portion of it will be open till the end, but we can start. There's a lot that we can do prior to that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. And thanks for the questions. And we'll keep you updated. One thing about the cover construction is there's a lot of components. So you could, depending on funding, availability, resources, you might be able, as long as we have approval, maybe you do one part of the cover. Maybe you do one layer. Maybe you do, 2 layers consistently. Maybe you rework part of the old cover. So I think there's a lot of flexibility in what we can do based on funding available. And like we talked about, depending on when you start that and how many activities that are going on concurrently with different layers, I guess there's a lot of opportunity to pull it left if the funding's there and we're ready to go. So think it's a positive story there.
Yeah.
Liz is working on something for me right now. Couldn't make it, but she sends her hello and to everybody. So I'll do a quick groundwater update. So again, we continue injection extraction operations. Extraction was started again in March. And that's part of our interim action system, really protecting the critical habitat, endangered fish. So that's something that is routine. GCAP status or groundwater compliance action plan. We've talked a lot about that. Really, well, what is that? It's a document we put together that NRC will concur on the final strategy. What is our final strategy for the long-term groundwater remedy? And when we talk about important regulatory milestones, we've got the cell cover approval, we've got the GCAP concurrence, and then site closure reports. So as we work with legacy management, we're looking, all those things as early as we can start and plan and understand what NRC review timelines are. What do they need to concur on? Those are the things we've been working on. So part of that is how much, how can we really accelerate the GCAP as well? And I think we found some opportunities to do that. We're currently working on the modeling. There's really 3 phases of modeling. There's your finding the conceptual site model, there's a calibrated flow model, and then there's fate and transport modeling. And the fate and transport is really what's going to help us decide, can in that 100-year window, will it naturally attenuate? Will there need to be some sort of remedial strategy? What does that look like? So starting in early, recently started this groundwater modeling effort. We think about this time next year, probably a little earlier, we'll have all the modeling complete. And we'll be able to really answer some of those uncertainties. We'll also be at a point where we're calling it a 60% GCAP, probably going to be closer to an 80% GCAP because we're going to have all the modeling in place. So, we get to that point, that's early 26, and we should have a lot of answers. That's certainly early enough to plan forward from there. So I think it's another. I think we're ahead of schedule on where we thought we'd be with GCAP, and got a great team of people working on that now. So more to come. Liz will have more to say, and she's obviously knows a lot more about it than I do, so we'll save the hard questions for her. But if you've got any, I'm happy to try and answer them, for sure. And I guess that's just a good point, talk about mission too. It's not only the soil removal, but it's the groundwater, and we're working on both of those. And again, with that priority of pulling anything back that we can, accelerate as much as we can. So, Kenny is going to talk about another really critical part, its final status survey. So we need to be able to walk away and say we've cleaned up to the standard. We need to document and have assurance. And that process has been underway for a while. So Kenny's the lead for DOE on that, and let him talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so final status survey is the process that Northwind's Portage is verifying the soil's clean. So they do a combination of gamma scanning and then soil sampling. So the site's gridded out to 100 meters square. They call them survey units, and each one of those squares gets scanned, and 9 composite samples are taken out and put into one sample for that survey unit. 10% of those soil samples go to an offsite lab for verification also. And then right now they've got just over 3,000 survey units scanned, sampled, and that's all been on the clean area. They are starting to scanning inside the contamination area, and that's where they're gonna, we call it scratch and sniff. They scan it, fill it, things like that. So that's getting underway here pretty soon.
So if it's not clean, do you guys work it until it gets to a point where it satisfies that
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they do scans, they have the equipment come in. And we've got some borehole data that they did back in like 2005, early 2000. So there's data, so we know kind of depths of contamination in various areas. So they're gonna kind of use that map and then they'll scan it, fill down, scan it, and continue that until it meets the cleanup criteria. And then also we have ORISE, which is the Oak Ridge Institute of Science and Technology or Engineering. They are going to come in and do independent verification. So they're going to be on site here in the near future. They will come up with their own survey plan, independent of Northwind's and ours, and they will pull soil samples and things like that. They'll also look at Northwind Portage documentation, you know, verify it, instrumentation, make sure it's calibrated, see what it needs to see. So there's a lot involved in that. The infill verification also. That's pretty much it. That's where we're at now. So they've got just over 3,000 survey units done, but it's all been on the clean area.
Right.
So that goes.
The challenge is coming.
Yeah.
How many
the challenge.
more do you have out of 3,000?
Right now, there's approximately 14,000 total.
Okay.
And that's just on the Moab side. And of course,
Right.
we'll do
Crescent too.
the Crescent also, which that's a lot. You know, fewer survey units up there.
Good.
Yeah, thanks, yeah, and that's another example, starting early, so we started this way, it's been a year now, probably.
July will be a year.
Yeah,
They started
so,
the final status.
you know, if we had waited till the end, or, you know, the latter years, you're extending, you know, the completion date out
Right.
a couple of years, probably a year or two, so this is an opportunity, as Kenny said, let's start in these areas, you know, we call them clean, but we do have to verify they are truly clean. Start with what we can access, and it's been a good effort, and it gives us an opportunity to learn the process, to learn what works, and then apply that as we move forward. So it's a good effort, and more updates to come on that. ORISE will be on site in a couple of weeks.
First week of May, they'll be out to start their initial, they'll put together a plan and they'll probably be out a couple times this year and then throughout the life of the project, just to do those things.
All right, thanks, Kenny. And we'll move to public affairs and communications. Barbara, giving us virtually today.
Can you guys hear me?
A little quiet, but
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes. Can you hear us?
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
I can hear you. Thanks. So just a quick update on the public affairs side. I did take part in the museum's opening of their U-92 uranium exhibit. If any of you have been to that, you probably know what a great exhibit it is. And if you haven't had a chance, please go down and visit them. It will be moving into, I believe, the phase 2 of the exhibit. Should be in July, that we might take part in that changeover as well. In addition, as I mentioned last time when we met in January, I am rescheduling the Las Colonias tour and discussion. So last week I sent out some dates for everyone to look at, potential dates. Hopefully all of you saw that email. I know some of you responded right away. So once I have a consensus of what the best date will be, I'll schedule that, set it up with LM, the Las Colonias Park is a site of theirs. And then also the Grand Junction Parks and Rec folks will be there for the discussion. In addition, I am looking forward to scheduling a CJ site tour for the steering committee members. I haven't sent out a potential dates email about that, but I will be sending that out maybe next week. And so watch for that as well. And that's all I have, Matt. Thank you.
Have you heard from Congressman Kennedy's office at all?
Sorry, Joette, can you say that again?
Yeah, have you heard from Congressman Kennedy's office?
I did not. Larry responded to the email about Las Colonias, but no, Joel did not respond.
Because Congressman Kennedy, he's in town actually today. And then my understanding is he's gonna be here also in the middle of May. And he, we met with him when we were in Washington. He really doesn't know anything about this site. So I think, I'm sure his staff will reach out in May. They really want, I think they'll want a tour. If that's possible, because, we kind of educated him a little bit. But, he said, yeah, we told him, we've got 1 million tons left. And he goes, wow, there was 1 million tons of tailings. And we're like, no, there was 16 billion. So, he needs to, he's very supportive of this project, but we need to get him to see it because, seeing it is everything. So anyway, you may.
Well,
be
I
hearing-
was. Okay, yeah, and I had asked Jessica if, when Senator Curtis, then Representative Curtis, became the senator, Larry remained on the steering committee and that spot opened up for Representative Kennedy's staffer to be a part of the steering committee. But my understanding is that he hasn't sent a staffer to be part of the steering committee yet. So, I can work with my EM headquarters folks to reach out to his office and see who a staffer might be.
I can give you that information. I've got it.
Okay,
So I'll just send you an email of who we've been working with.
that would be
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Okay, you bet.
Yeah, and I think, earlier the better.
Okay.
Just from a communication
Yep, yep.
standpoint and leadership of, getting concurrence on visits and tours and
Right.
stuff would be best to,
If all else fails, we could take them out and just drive them up and talk about it with them if you guys can't get them in, but I'll get Barbara the information. You guys can.
it'd be great, yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for it, so appreciate it.
Yeah, he'll be really good. But I think he's a little overwhelmed. It's pretty overwhelming back there right now, I think. But I feel really good about his support for what we're doing.
Great. Great, thanks, Barbara. I think those are all the updates we have, unless there's questions.
Anybody have any questions for the team? All right.
I had a question, if that's all right. I was just curious. My name is Siobhan Kitchen. I'm at DDMS. We're an environmental data management company, and we work a lot with both Tim Parker, who's a business partner at Earthsoft, and also Legacy Management. So my question is, with all this modeling work that you guys are working on, and the finalizing of some of the monitoring and cleanup of injections in the water, et cetera. All of this data that you're gathering, are you working with LM to make sure that the data is already in a format that can be transferred to LM's Equus database system? So that additional work to convert the data later isn't, so you can save money to not convert it later if it's already in the proper format? I was just curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm not certainly not the expert on it, but we have had these, and I don't know if you were on initially, but we talked about these, this LMEM IPT project team, and one of the technical groups is that we're breaking out into these technical sessions. One of those technical groups will be on data transfer, data management. So we have, in some of those previous conversations, we've, I don't talk that language, but I know that the people on the call did. It sounded like there was a consensus and understanding there, but I do appreciate the question, and that's something we'll ensure is it is appropriate, but yeah, I think. Yeah, so I guess the answer to your question is we have been thinking about that. It will be part of this transition team that's in process. And we will have a lot of data, so I guess to answer your question you asked, but I will follow through with that. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to you, Jessica. Air monitoring activities and status update. And you know, before we, I mean, you may know this, or you guys may know this, but will there be a time when the air monitoring, when we see like a big decrease in the data that Jessica's collected, that you guys are collecting, that she's analyzing? At some point?
I'm sorry, I can't. The little buttons are right behind you.
Oh,
So sorry.
That's a good question. I think on the, the local and Kenny may be a better person to answer. I think on a local, close to project, we have internal monitoring, we have our external, which is community monitoring, we have internal. And you would see like decreases in a mile, you see a reduced, gamma.
right.
Yeah, correct. As the file, but then we do see changes in that. You'll see changes in radon on site. And radio particulate has always been pretty low. But Kenny, I would assume that all those things, as the source term goes away, are going to go down significantly.
And like I said, that'll be, probably mid-27 when everything's
It's
pretty
gone.
much out. Yeah. But
That'll be fascinating
Yeah.
to see over time. Something to think about, to provide when we get to that point. It'd be interesting to just see where we started in 2009 and where we are now.
Yeah, good question.
I'm gonna be really brief on this. I don't want to take up too much time. It's basically the same thing every single time. The only thing that's changed is that my position did receive a extension on its grant funding. So I have a period of performance until February 4th, 2026. So y'all are stuck with me for another year. And there has been one reduction in the technical inspectors sites. I've typically had 4, but now I have 3. Observation points haven't changed, they've remained the same. Pictures, again, illustrating the same amount of change over a quarterly period. I've been trying to, rather than doing really direct comparisons between the images, I wanted to get kind of the split field vision of my observation points, so you're kind of getting a greater viewpoint of the site as a whole, instead of having these like really zoomed out images. You can kind of see a wider scale of what I'm observing at all of these points. So, like I said, you've got a little bit more of like a zoomed in option and a zoomed out option, although I am starting to struggle with the plants and kind of like buildup of tumbleweeds. I look very ridiculous on the side of the hallway with my phone up here trying to take pictures so I don't capture all the plants and whatnot. Right here, observation point number 4, this is where you can kind of really see that the subpile, or where the location of the legacy mill used to be in this location right here, and then of course the well field in the back. But again, we're getting that greater viewpoint down here. And again, I'm not really gonna keep going over because this is just a side view. I don't know what y'all called it. And then here's the capping station. No major changes. This one's probably our most consistent point that doesn't have too much of an observational change. And we've got the lovely graph of the tailings over time. As you can see, we've been pretty consistent, but as Matt said, y'all have been becoming more ahead of schedule. Last, if I remember correctly, last quarterly meeting, you were 4 trains ahead of schedule. Now you're running 6. So the data, in my opinion, has starting to show that kind of leap in volume from when you started doing the 4 trains per week right here. And then at the end of March 2025, approximately 15.4 million tons of tailing and mill debris had been shipped to the Crescent Junction site. approximately 84,415 tons of tailings and mill debris removed in March 2025, the end of the first quarter, indicating that 96.3% of the estimated 16 million tons had been removed from the project since the beginning. And you continue to operate on a regular scale, but that may not be correct anymore. Since you are ahead of schedule. And no changes, as far as I understand, in the operation of the groundwater remediation and injection system. And as you said, you restarted in March, the injection program. So we have prevented, or the project has prevented 994,324 pounds of ammonia and 5,744 pounds of uranium from reaching the river, with so far in 2025, more than 2.5 or 2.3 million gallons of water being injected. And I double checked that the maps that were included in my air monitoring data report were accurate. They were, but I do know that there has been some changes to the air monitoring stations that are not being reflected on this map. So I'm not quite sure who I would reach out to for getting updated air monitoring maps.
Yeah, if you could reach out to Barbara.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know there's been some changes specifically at the Crescent Junction site when it comes to nomenclature and active air monitoring sites. So for example, it looks like station 306 had actually been eliminated at the Crescent Junction site. So there's no data going on from these for the third quarter of 2024.
Yeah, and I think that Kenny, you may know, I think that was basically a reassignment. So the maximally exposed individual, there's a few residents, so you can just request,
Okay.
target the highest potential maximally exposed individual. So we can certainly get you that information.
And
I don't know if you guys are aware, but we just did a LiDAR laser imaging project that's underway right now, and that really just it's a map to check how erosion affects. It's going to be more of a flood mitigation thing, or just how the floods are changing the landscape. That data will be available in a couple of weeks. I don't know if you guys find that interesting, but we'll have access to it. Everybody will. It'd be just interesting to see how the elevation or see the pile shrink over time. But I don't know if that's helpful. That'll be available.
so I know there's a lot of data on here, but I wanted to do a one-stop shop when it came to all data in regards to the site. I've got a year picture of the ammonia and uranium extraction, just shows the changes of extractions in difference of pounds between each month. And then, of course, the quarterly differences between radioparticulates and radon for both the Moab and the Crescent Junction sites. I noticed majority of them did elevate, but they did not elevate by a large amount. Found that the data seems to be kind of balancing out a little bit more, doesn't seem to wild in its jumps between quarters here lately. And I think that's moving forward with that suggestion of the visual representation of the air data. I can add a couple of slides that show yearly or annual changes, but that might be a little bit too hard since there's such a delay in data, but I can definitely do data for the lifetime of the project from data that I have access to. So, and that's it.
Any questions for Jessica? Great, thank you. I might be reaching out to you for some photos to take with me when I go back.
Yep, I got a bunch.
Yep, great, thanks. All right, last, we have stakeholder updates. So I'll just go around. Updates, Ben?
Other than we changed the name of the office to the Moab Office of Tourism, Economic Development has shifted over to the Commission Admin.
Okay. Dave?
Just the right of way amendment to the harbor. It's Sunday yesterday. So we should get it out.
Thanks so much. Awesome.
Good. Bill,
Nothing for me?
did we ever get the dirt situation? Remember we did the last one, I think we talked about using the site for dirt?
Right, I don't think that's like immediate need at the moment, but it's something in the mid-range future, put it that way. I haven't heard anything anyway coming from any developers or anything. I mean, they're all the time searching for a pile some dirt, but they're finding it someplace. I'm not sure
Maybe
where.
down at 500 West,
No,
yeah.
but at some point, yeah, I'm not sure, if I'll be kind of the lead on that or not, but just get a hold of the
Yeah,
office or what.
yeah, I'm pressed to reach out to Barbara. Barbara's kind of the key
Yeah.
there to circulate information, so.
Okay.
So was that to bring holes on at the last meeting, to bring dirt on site?
Yeah,
Yeah, if they've got additional dirt from some of these cleanup activities from flooding it. if they're
Yeah,
But I
that's-
think a lot of it's from the flooding, I think, and, you know, that's kind of been taken care of now, but we'll get some more flooding eventually.
yeah, for the city it is. We haven't done our cleanup yet.
You haven't?
No,
Do you know if you're gonna need a place to?
yeah, I brought it up after
Dispose of
you
that,
did. I
okay.
brought it up to our staff and they're like, oh, that would be great.
Okay.
But we haven't done anything with it yet, but
Okay, well, maybe the city can, we're not in immediate need of it.
Okay.
But as far as the county goes. But I was also noticing and talking to different developers, you know, and they're struggling with that as well. What that looks like to get them on site or anybody else, you know, we just have to go through that process, right?
Yeah, well, certainly feel free to reach out if there's something we can, I've kind of socialized it with our team and, you know, that material can be hard to come by. And, you know, we would have to work through the process of
Right.
getting on site, looking at the activity, you know, it has to have certain. Considering the background radioactivity, some of the material here, you know, would it meet site requirements, things like that?
Right.
That's something, but certainly, you know. Wouldn't wanna. Pass up a potential opportunity because. Yeah, depending on how things.
I think the site's gonna need some material.
yeah.
It very well could, depending on how deep the sub pile goes
Yep.
and things, you know, we're gonna try and balance the areas, but.
But, and of course, you don't want a bunch of junky material.
Right,
There's,
exactly.
You know, concrete, asphalt, I think, you know, I want pretty clean material.
Right. I know that's what they did in Los Colones. Well, they had to bring in dirt. I don't know where they got it, but
Yeah.
that was something that had to happen for any development to go in there.
We brought in material several years ago.
I remember that.
And
I think it come off the Lions
I
Park
think so,
project.
yeah,
or something like
yeah,
that.
so we went through the sampling process and, but it's funny, that's probably the best growing. I mean, it was very rocky, very, think nothing's gonna grow in this, and it's really,
Easy.
thick. and-
Really rich,
Yeah, it's pretty.
As I recall, some of the stuff that came off of Lions Park did not meet your standards, so it was rejected.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't-
Probably
I don't know.
contaminated.
Right. It could have been.
And that's something when we bring on to the site, if I remember correctly, and Kenny, that the rule is it's actually a lower activity than. Like cleanup. It's the cleanup, and I think that's just some safety measures built in.
Sure.
Anything else, Bill?
Nope.
Colin? Steve? Tony, do you have anything you wanna add?
No updates for me other than to let them know that I haven't forgotten about you and I have a note to keep working on that monitoring permitting for below the high water mark. It's just a lot going on right now, but you are on my radar. I wanted to deliver that message in person.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tony, appreciate it.
I noticed Joel Brown joined us. Joel, do you have anything you wanna add from Senator Lee's office about this project?
No, I don't. Just looking forward to the tour out in the fall in Colorado.
Okay. Great, good. Thanks. The only thing I have, and you may have seen this in the paper, is that Senator Curtis and Senator Lee have sponsored a bill in Congress that requests the transfer of the property to Grand County, which is great. Hopefully, we just never know if anything's gonna get passed through Congress these days, but I feel, I think that's great that our senators are pushing that forward for us. So the city wrote a letter of support for that. You know, we initially we're hoping for joint ownership, but we feel like it is the county's jurisdiction at this point. That makes the most sense at this time. But we will be working really closely with the county on future development. We have a really good partnership agreement with an MOU with the county in that regard. So when we get to that point, I'm sure there'll be some joint efforts to look at what we want to do as the future site committee has recommended. So,
When would that take place? I mean, that transfer happened.
well, it has to pass Congress, so you know, then that's the challenge.
This still has to finish all of this work first.
Yeah, it wouldn't happen until 2029. I mean, it would be at the end of the project when it's closed. I believe that's what the legislation, I have it on my phone, but and he also added some language, which I was pleased about, that it can't be leased or sold to a private developer or a nonprofit. So it really has to stay within the hands of the county or the city, you know, local jurisdiction. And all of our delegation were right, totally on, all of the Utah delegation, not just our delegation, but the entire Utah delegation and the governor's office supported that. So feel pretty confident, but you just never know with confidence these days. I don't know. Good. And so that's it from me. Do we have any future considerations for our next meeting on July 22nd? If anybody would like to, sure we'll get more regarding the GCAP information. So,
Yeah, we'll keep you updated on that. I think by that time we'll have some more information on the final status survey. Be updated on that as well. Hopefully news on the disposal cell. So.
all right. All right, motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, Colin. Thanks, everybody. Good to see you.
Yeah, you see.
Thank you.
So have you,
Thank you.
thank you. So did you guys lose any
Good to
staff?
see you, Lee. Good job, you guys. Keep it up.
No?
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, so-